Exploring the intricacies of teaching gifted and talented students. Welcome. Welcome to the Professional Development Seminar Exploring the Intricacies of Teaching Gifted and Talented Students. This seminar is designed for classroom teachers to help them understand what makes gifted and talented students different, the social emotional needs of these students, the overexcitabilities or intensities that students cope with, what it takes to promote intrinsic motivation in gifted and talented students, and how to deal with and work through underachievement in this special population. Gifted students need teachers that advocate for their care, understand their needs, and provide differentiations in the classroom that will help them achieve at levels that correspond with their abilities. This training will work through topics in the following modules. And then this will be a quote. It says, "The surest path to positive self-esteem is to succeed at something which one perceived would be difficult. Each time we steal a student's struggle, we steal the opportunity for them to build self-confidence. They must learn to do hard things to feel good about themselves." That's a quote from Sylvia Rim. The training modules covered will be social and emotional needs, intensities of gifted and talented students, and motivation and underachievement. This training is designed to learn at your own pace. Please feel free to return to these modules as you learn to make connections between the modules and further familiarize yourself with the content. Let's begin. Social and emotional needs. Gifted and talented students are sometimes labeled as the lucky ones, students who are naturally talented for whom academic success comes easily. These students have been labeled as not obviously hurting when compared to classmates who struggle academically. The truth is that the hurt that gifted students feel tends to be more private than the ridicule other students feel. However, that doesn't make their pain any less real. Gifted and talented students suffer from avoidance and self-doubt in school when they are under challenge. Avoidance and self-doubt is when students avoid putting in effort or doubt their abilities to fit in with the crowd. A classroom teacher can offer differentiation for gifted and talented students. They can let them do work that is different from their peers. Some students suffer from perfectionism and the pressure to always succeed. Perfectionism and the pressure to succeed is when students put pressure on themselves to succeed at a level that is damaging to their self-esteem and mental health. What a classroom teacher can do is to offer a growth mindset as part of your classroom culture. Offer opportunities for a productive struggle. Some students are diagnosed as twice exceptional, gifted and talented at the same time as being diagnosed with another learning or behavioral disability such as autism, reading or writing disabilities, or ADHD. So which students are twice exceptional? Students who are recognized as gifted and talented at the same time as being diagnosed with a learning or behavioral disability are twice exceptional. 6% of students with disabilities are labeled as twice exceptional. Gifted and talented programs are severely underfunded, which leads to less opportunity for students to spend time with their like-ability peers. So special education funding for gifted and talented students receive 2 cents per $100 allocated to special education programs. So what can a classroom teacher do for twice exceptional students? They can differentiate instruction to meet both aspects of abilities. They can team up with special educators and administrators, and they can advocate for funding at local and state levels. Intensities. Gifted children should not be pressed to fit in with all other children the same age. Rather, their capacity for intense experiencing is an asset that deserves to be understood and affirmed instead of squashed. There's a quote from Helene Grimaud. Intensities can be characterized by intense and accelerated mental activity and are often seen in gifted and talented students. These intensities can be broken down into 5 subcategories. When fostered in a learning environment, intensities can help lead a child to a higher sense of self-efficacy and boost a child's potential. In this training, each of these intensity subcategories will be explained, and teachers will be given ways to cultivate intensities and channel them into a positive direction. So these are the subcategories of intensities. Psychomotor. A student with psychomotor intensity does their best thinking while moving. Sensual. Sensual intensity has to do with stimulation of one or all of the 5 senses, and students can view these experiences positively or negatively. Imagination. Imaginative intensity occurs in students who learn best when their creative side is accessed. Intellectual. Students tend to fixate on one subject and want to learn everything they can about it. They like to share what they know with others and become an expert in their field. Emotional. Emotional intensity can be seen in students who feel things deeply, whether it is their own emotions or the emotions of others. So let's focus in on psychomotor intensity and how classroom teachers can cultivate psychomotor intensity. Give students the opportunity to move while working. Some examples of this would be to place a thick exercise band around the legs of a chair for students to bounce their feet on, to provide a space to jump in place or pace, to create a square out of tape for students to move their bodies in while a lesson is being taught, and to allow for outdoor learning. Let's talk about how classroom teachers can cultivate sensual intensity. Teachers can provide stimulation of the senses or alternately provide an alternate way of instruction if sensory input is uncomfortable for the student. Examples might be sensory dough that has a smell or a certain texture to it, moon sand for building, or for students that need alternate instruction, you can use spoons instead of hands for mixing, or a learning partner to do the hands-on mixing. Imaginative intensity. How classroom teachers can cultivate imaginative intensity would be to give students the opportunity to think creatively. Some examples would be imaginative stories or plays, to create video games, to act out scenarios, and to have creative expressions within your lessons. Intellectual intensity. How a classroom teacher can cultivate intellectual intensity. Give students the opportunity to deeply research a topic of interest. Some examples of that would be to share findings with the class, to do a passion project, to have a show and tell time, and to provide positive feedback for their learning. And emotional intensity. Classroom teachers can cultivate emotional intensity by allowing students to feel emotions and be guided by a caring mentor. Some examples would be to share their feelings in a morning meeting, to check in daily on a Google form for their temperament, to do role-playing activities for social emotional learning, and to be part of a peer counseling program as a counselor or a participant. Motivation and underachievement. Motivation and underachievement in gifted and talented students tends to go hand in hand, and this module of training will focus on intrinsic motivation and how the classroom teacher can foster intrinsic motivation in students. It will then follow up with the causes of underachievement in gifted and talented students and how classroom teachers can support and nurture students experiencing underachievement. Intrinsic motivation in students occurs when the student chooses to do something because it is enjoyable and interesting, as opposed to doing something because it is externally rewarded or expected. This is particularly applicable to gifted and talented students, where the challenge of completing a difficult task requires much more effort, promotes self-worth, and promotes motivation. So how can classroom teachers promote intrinsic motivation in gifted students? Well, they can differentiate instruction. They can differentiate instruction to provide challenging curriculum and provide a productive struggle. They can offer student choice, offering student choices through choice boards, passion projects, and letting students choose group mates and letting students choose the format for their classwork. They can also provide opportunity for competition by giving students the opportunity to compete in a non-rewards-based format. Teachers can provide autonomy supportive teaching. Autonomy supportive teaching is where the teacher adopts student perspectives, the teacher welcomes students' thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, the teacher supports students' motivational development and capacity for autonomous self-regulation. A classroom teacher can adopt student perspectives by engaging the students in active discussions and welcoming students' thoughts, feelings, and behaviors by allowing the students to express themselves freely. Now let's talk about underachievement. According to the Washington Post, as many as 52% of gifted and talented students are considered underachieving at one point or another. The causes of this underachievement are multifaceted, but can be broken down into the following 4 components: deficit reward systems, cognitive and emotional handicaps, educational gaps, and passive-aggressive propensities. We will explore each of these topics and discuss what a teacher can do to remedy each situation. Deficit reward systems. Deficit reward systems are ones in which rewards are not based on academic effort or success, or are not motivational. Strengthening deficit reward systems will be gone over in the next slide. Cognitive and emotional handicaps. Cognitive and emotional handicaps are disabilities in thinking or processing emotions. Educational gaps. Gaps for gifted and talented students include not being in a program designed for gifted and talented students with like ability peers. Passive-aggressive tendencies. Passive-aggressive tendencies include resistance to requests, procrastinating, expressing sullenness, or acting stubborn. So now we'll go a little deeper. Deficit reward systems. How can a classroom teacher strengthen a deficit reward system? They can base rewards on scholastic achievement and effort, and they can provide an opportunity for competition. How can a classroom teacher deal with cognitive and emotional handicaps? Cognitive and emotional handicaps are best dealt with by a school counselor or counselor outside of school. Teachers can explore students' interests and abilities with students in class. Educational gaps. How can a classroom teacher help fill educational gaps? A classroom teacher can advocate for a program for gifted and talented students where students can be fulfilled by challenging curriculum and be with like-abilitied peers. Teachers can also differentiate instruction and group gifted and talented students together. How can classroom teachers deal with passive-aggressive behaviors? Passive-aggressive propensities are dealt with through counseling. Teachers can work with counselors to set goals with students, and teachers can help students with self-regulation strategies. I want to take this time to thank you. This training has been provided to help classroom teachers explore the intricacies of teaching gifted and talented students. Please feel free to go through the modules again and find connections and strategies to help the classroom teacher identify with their gifted and talented students.